People who became successful after the age of 40, Part 5, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's path to global leadership was anything but quick. He spent decades as a radio announcer and Hollywood actor, became a union leader, and only then, after turning 50, stepped fully into politics. His greatest achievements came late, elected governor of California at 55 and president of the United States at 69. Reagan's story shows how experience gathered over many years can mature into influence and decisive leadership after 40. Early life and Hollywood years. Ronald Wilson Reagan was born on February 6, 1911, in Tampico, Illinois. He grew up in modest circumstances, worked his way through Eureka College, and started his career as a radio sports announcer in the 1930s. A screen test brought him to Hollywood, where he appeared in more than 50 films across 2 decades. Reagan was not simply a performer. He developed leadership skills as president of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, serving from 1947 to 1952 and again from 1959 to 1960. Those years forced him to negotiate through labor disputes, anti-communist tensions, and industry change. The experience sharpened his ability to communicate clearly, build coalitions, and stand firm, skills that would later define his political life. A political awakening after 40. In his early career, Reagan supported the New Deal as a Democrat. But by the 1950s and early 1960s, after many years on the speaking circuit as a General Electric spokesman, his views shifted toward limited government, lower taxes, and personal responsibility. In 1962, at age 51, he formally joined the Republican Party. 2 years later, at 53, Reagan delivered A Time for Choosing, a televised speech on behalf of Barry Goldwater's 1964 presidential run. The speech electrified viewers. Even though Goldwater lost, Reagan emerged as a rising conservative voice. The address showcased his gift, taking complex economic and political ideas and explaining them in plain, persuasive language. It launched him into elected politics, well after the age when many people think major career changes are possible. Governor at 55, the testing ground for leadership. Reagan ran for governor of California and won in 1966 at age 55, then won re-election in 1970. He inherited a state wrestling with campus unrest, budget pressures, and debates over the size and scope of government. As governor, Reagan focused on controlling spending, reforming welfare, and negotiating tough issues with the Democratic legislature. He also signed the nation's first no-fault divorce law and, after reflection and controversy, supported a law liberalizing abortion in limited cases, positions that show his record was more complex than slogans. His governorship became a training ground. He learned how to set priorities, when to compromise, and how to sell ideas to the public. Twice he sought the presidency and fell short, first in 1968 and again in a near miss against Gerald Ford for the 1976 Republican nomination. Many would have stopped. Reagan didn't. President at 69, a late peak on the world stage. In 1980, at 69, Reagan was elected the 40th President of the United States, the oldest to take office at that time. He entered during high inflation, high interest rates, energy shocks, and a crisis of confidence at home and abroad. Domestically, his administration pursued tax cuts, deregulation, and an effort to rein in inflation, with crucial help from an independent Federal Reserve under Paul Volcker. The 1981 Economic Recovery Tax Act lowered marginal tax rates, aiming to spur growth and investment. The early 1980s recession was painful, but a long expansion followed, with unemployment falling and inflation tamed compared to the 1970s. Reagan also took hard lines, famously firing striking air traffic controllers in 1981, which his supporters viewed as restoring the rule of law and critics saw as anti-labor. On foreign policy, Reagan increased defense spending and confronted the Soviet Union rhetorically and strategically, calling it an evil empire, while launching the Strategic Defense Initiative in 1983. Yet he also proved willing to negotiate. Working with Mikhail Gorbachev, he helped achieve the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty, which eliminated an entire class of nuclear missiles. His 1987 Berlin speech, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," symbolized the moral clarity he wanted the West to project. The Cold War's end had many causes, but Reagan's mix of pressure and diplomacy played a meaningful role. His presidency had serious controversies. The 1981 assassination attempt wounded him and tested his resilience. The Iran-Contra affair, exposed in 1986, raised grave constitutional questions about covert operations. Investigations criticized the administration's oversight, and Reagan acknowledged mistakes. Still, his approval rebounded, and he left office in 1989 with high ratings and a reshaped political landscape. Legacy and lessons. Reagan's late life success flowed from decades of preparation. Radio trained his voice, Hollywood taught presence, SAG taught negotiation. The GE circuit honed his message, governorship tested his policies. By the time he reached the White House, he had a lifetime of communication and leadership experience behind him. After leaving office, Reagan announced in 1994 that he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He died on June 5, 2004, at age 93. Today, his legacy remains debated, praised for revitalizing confidence, helping end the Cold War, and driving economic growth, criticized for widening deficits and policy choices that, some argue, left vulnerable groups behind. But on one point, there is no debate. His greatest influence came after 40, with the apex at 69. Conclusion. Ronald Reagan did not peak early. He changed careers, changed parties, lost races, and kept going. He won the governorship at 55 and the presidency at 69, proof that it's possible to begin again in midlife and still reach the highest levels of leadership. His life teaches a simple lesson. What you learn across decades can prepare you for your most important work later on.